I think it's time now. So welcome also from our side, from Lab 1886, and welcome in our Lab 1886 shuttle truck here at Republica 2019. My name is David, and together with my colleague Sabine over there, I will guide you through our sessions here in our truck. Our first speaker this year is Alex Dogario, and he is talking about voice as the new UI and its increasing importance. And so I would like to hand over to Alex now to tell you more about it.
Thank you. All right. So welcome to the session. Hopefully I can give you some insights into voice as a new user interface and why it's so important and why it will affect probably each and every one of you. And you will interact with it as well. The title basically says voice will outgrow the text channel by 2025. What we've seen a lot in the past is a hype around messaging. And if you look at Asian countries like Korea or let's say China with WeChat, Kakao Chat, there you can do whatever you want on a chat and message platform. And for us, this is not really happening that much. We text a lot privately with WhatsApp and whatnot, Facebook Messenger, but we don't use it so much for business tasks. We don't use it for example, booking appointments when we talk about automotive. We don't use it to track the status of our vehicle as we talk automotive, but you could also take it, for example, a doctor's appointment, right? You still call in. And that's the experience that we've made. We've tried a lot to do through text channels in the past, through also WhatsApp Business Chat now and all that kind of stuff, but people don't really adopt that. They're still staying with their old traditional channel, which is the voice channel. And I'm not meaning the one with Alexa or Google Home, because that's something that probably each and every one of you knows, and it's quite easy to build voice interfaces for that. It's really about the phone, with the crappy, really bad quality you get through it, and the hard way to integrate into that old operating systems, phone systems and all that, and make that work and accessible for the customer. And drive it beyond just having a flow of information back and forth, but get the systems to get shit done for the customer, for people who interact with it. Because else it's just something, you talk to interact with. It's just not more useful than a website with an FAQ page. Okay? So this is what I want to give you a little bit of insights today. And I think we all know this, what VoiceBot user experience, if you can call it even a VoiceBot, used to be, or instant voice recognition, or ASR as it's called, was anything but customer friendly. We all know the stupid lines. You go in and then it says press 1 if you want that, press 2 if you want that, and then none of the numbers has anything with the topic you want to get addressed. So you just press 0 or you start frustratingly pushing the Raute button, the hashtag, like a crazy person, or yelling into the phone, hopefully that somebody picks it up, but it's not going to happen. So that's really a frustrating part, as it used to be. And we all remember, so one of the first bots, right, Zippy, sorry for the crappy picture, but it was Windows 95, so I took it from Google, and I have the permission from Microsoft to show it, that picture, because you need to get a permission for anything you show because of copyrights and stuff. But anyway, the thing was back then, neither AI nor people were ready for it. But now things are changing. People interact more and more with digital assistants, more and more with, let's say, non-physical persons that are digital in nature and fueled by AI and converse with those systems. And the technology, and every day you interact with it, learns and gets better. And that's why in the future, this will be a key thing that we as companies and also as users will have to look like. What I want to show you is why voice right now starts to really become the next big thing. And I think it's not only the next big thing, but something to stick for quite a while. Then I want to go into voice UI usage and outlook. How do people interact right now with it? And I think for you as media agencies, no matter if you're a developer because you built the systems, if you're in research from university because you got to teach people how to do that stuff, or marketing agencies, how you can use a single point of contact, as Alexa will pose in the future, and market your content through a voice UI to the end customer, that all will have a huge impact. And then benefits of voice UI, well, I think it is superior to text channel, and then the complexity and current issues we face, and a technological outlook, maybe a little bit a scary outlook, where all things go. So why now? Let's go a little bit into history. So it all started out 71. I took this slide from another company. They did it really well. Assistant voice device for engineers. IBM was one of the first to work on that speech recognition, and they did it quite well. At one point, they thought that technology is not going to carry, and they sold it off. That became Nuance, which is now the world-leading company when it comes to speech-to-text, text-to-speech technology. It's basically built in any car. Even our cars have it. When you talk to our cars with MBUX and stuff, it's Nuance behind it. And the Dragon engine had its beginnings, early beginnings in 71. We had in 87 the first dolls that would respond to you if you talk to them. Of course, very crappy and rudimentary, but nonetheless. Okay, so the 80s were always very sci-fi. And they tried a lot of stuff. Then we had Dragon Dictate, which then sooner became that company that I was talking about, Dragon as Nuance. And then we have first applications for online ordering via voice, Net by Tel, who had that. Okay, so they were already thinking 18 or 19 years ahead of doing e-commerce through voice, which Alexa is now. Originally, when they planned Alexa, and I talked to Alex Spinelli, who used to be the CTO for Alexa globally, who's now with LivePerson, he told me that they thought that that thing would be used to buy stuff. People would use Alexa to buy regular stuff as they would do through Amazon. But they wouldn't. Not yet. They used it for all sorts of other stuff, for their skills and gimmicks, to check the weather, to set an alarm, to ask it what's 5 by 3, to do calculations, to entertain their kids, listen to music, whatnot. Okay? Going forward in 08, before Siri, we had an app from Google that you could, through voice-enabled interface, you could search. Okay, so that was even before Siri was launched. And then, of course, 2014, the great breakthrough with Alexa when they launched Alexa with Echo. So Alexa being the voice and Echo the device. And 2016, Microsoft claimed to have the first system that is as good in recognition of speech as a human, or even better. So that's quite amazing that a system could understand humans better, or at least as good as a human being. And one funny fact, 2017, Amazon argues Alexa speech protected by First Amendment. So they're already talking about a device being like a physical person and having a right to talk and listen. There were some criminal cases where Alexa also listened, because it listens always. And if you sign their data privacy policy, then you know that. And it listened basically to a crime. And then they wanted to use that piece of recording during the trial. And so there was a huge argument about that. And Alexa was then also put, okay, can it listen all the time? Does it have freedom of speech? So we see a little bit of a transition when companies already start working in that area and trying to push digital systems into the area of human beings. So there's been an evolution, and we see now a huge breakthrough. To keep in mind, we have a huge app saturation. I mean, you've probably had bazillions of apps out there and companies who do apps, but none of them are really being used. Right? You can go to the App Store and you can see 20 apps being there and none of them being really used. People get really, really tired with that. And they use maybe WhatsApp, you use Google to search something, and that's pretty much it, and maybe Spotify. And that probably like 3 out of 4 times. You use those few favorite apps. And for the rest, you just want to have it as convenient as possible, and your gateway to the world is Google. That's your search bar. That's your gateway to any information you want or anything you want to do. But that will change in the future. And it's starting to break down. It's starting to break down that little search window into something else. The AI technology, as I said before, has evolved dramatically. So this is something that I work a lot on. I train those systems and I do a lot of data preparation to train them, which is 80% of the work. And the training itself is pushing a button and it makes and that's done. So that's easy. But the data, getting the data and training the data, preparing it, that's it. And we can see, of course, because of the data, that AI has a better word error rate. Word error rate just states that out of 100 words, there were 5 words on average that are transcribed improperly by a human being and 4.9 words by a machine. So it got better than a human being. Okay, so that's amazing. I know for you it's like, oh yeah, okay, interesting, a number, but that's amazing. You can do a lot of stuff with that. The next thing is heavy voice UI usage. So we can see that US adults accessing voice bots monthly, and it can be on their smartphones. If it's your Google Assistant, your Siri, or your whatever you have even the Alexa app. In cars, a lot of people talk to our cars. We got that great MBUX system in Mercedes, and that's going to grow in the future as well. And you got the thing of smart speakers. And smart speakers, don't just think of Alexa and Google Home and that if you know it. But in the future, your fridge will talk to you. Your microwave will talk to you. Your vacuum cleaner will talk to you. I don't know if your underpants will talk to you and say, change, please. It's about time. Could happen. But anything will start talking to you. And it won't have a screen to touch on and type. It will be a voice user interface. And then finally, people want more and more easier lifestyle and convenient to use, which is about half the persons want that from a product. Easy to use, convenient, makes my life better. So these are huge drivers why voice now starts to pick up, as in omni-channel for everybody. Now looking into voice UI usage and outlook. A lot of text, but let's focus on the most important thing. 50% of all customers in the future will be voice operated by 2020. That's a big number. If you think that now more than, I'd say, round about 90% use Google in the Western Hemisphere, then this will change. So this is scary a prospect for them as well. Because in the future, you search stuff through your microwave. You ask your microwave, how is it going to be in the future? You ask your maybe Alexa assistant. So their predominance from Google in terms of being the gateway to the internet, that will shake. And there's new players to jump into that sphere. You can see here also the idea of e-commerce going more into voice. It's simply sometimes a combination also of voice and screens. We'll have that in our cars as well. So if you think we have now an app store where you can buy digital services, in the future, it will be all about the car and what you do about it. So it won't be anymore about just building vehicles, but vehicles will become just like smartphones on roads, on wheels, right? And you'll be able to buy all sorts of digital services through it and swap through it. And that's going to happen through voice, because while you're driving, it's quite hard to type something. So you'll use the voice channel to do that. Just a few more figures there. I can skip those. Demand for voice assistants is increasing tremendously. I think this is also important to keep in mind. So ownership of voice-enabled assistants, standalone devices, we can see that's not a lot if you look at households. And this is looking at each country, as you can see here in the middle. But if you look who purchase intent to have a voice-enabled device at home, that's going to increase dramatically. And that's by 2020, right? So we can see a huge increase, almost 3 times as much, 5 times as much. So you can see China and the US really pushing that topic. And that's going to happen for us as well. And this changes a lot for you as well, maybe if you're media agencies, how you cater your content to your audience, how you make it accessible to your audience. Because in the future, maybe Google or Alexa will be your gateway through which you have to go to push your content to the customer. Because they won't have any visual interface to reference to, right? And then your content must be catered for the voice channel. And the hashtag slogan, too long, didn't read, that applies for voice more than for text. Because for voice, if you got not interesting content and it's not written in a great story and it's not interactive, people will drop it. Unless they're hearing an audiobook, then that's something different. But for news, not gonna keep them interested. Why they want to have voice? I mean, you get a one-to-one communication, which is great. It's informal and it's intuition-based, right? It's as if I would interact with you. I don't know you, but I would say, hey, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you. Arrived on time today. You too, I've seen that. So it's informal, it's intuition-based, and that's how we should design those voice user interfaces. If you look at people who use it, it's the younger generation. It's the people between 14 and 17. But those will be the people who are going to drive what's happening in our society 10 years from now, maybe 15 years from now. And of course, this is pushing through. The adoption rates will go up. We're going to see in the next years these bars grow also substantially, and no matter of the age. Also quite interesting, voice bots are leading the evolution towards blended digital and physical experience. So once we had screens or iPhones, but those were not really connected to all the devices around us. But now we can see voice really being like a connector between the digital and the physical with IoT, like information systems that are in the, or infrastructure that is connected to the internet and has a voice user interface. Suddenly I can connect to anything and interact with it, which makes it a great thing. Okay. I know that's a lot of statistics, but I'm just trying to push everything onto you so you get as much value from it as possible. As said, last time I had a controversial topic with more jokes. This time I wanted to just drop a lot of stuff on you. What are voice interfaces used for? I think this is really interesting. As said, huge contender when it comes to Google, right? Filtering and refinement, general customer service. This is an area where I'm a lot active. So we all know those customer service lines we call to if we catch somebody. Then usually that person most likely is not able to help us. And if it's a complex topic, if not, they're going to push it to another queue and you're waiting again. And most of the time, companies do not have business hours when we got time. So I can only talk for myself. When I call my cell phone operator, usually I'm outside their business hours. Same goes for a car company. When I want to book an appointment, when do I call? Usually when I'm out of work. When I'm out of work, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I don't know. So they're closed at that point in time. So I need some entity, something to interact with. And this is where we're going to see also voice bots coming into place. This is a huge topic that I'm working on, or we are working on to give better service to our clients. Adding to cart, quite interesting. Adding to cart is really like a quick shop, like this in one-click buy idea that you say just, this is a great topic, and you see it and say, add that to my cart. Checking status, huge topic. Many times I just call in, no matter where I go, to just ask for the status. So if I have my car in the workshop for repair, then I just call in and I want to know where is it at, when is it going to be ready. Same goes for a contract you do, I don't know, I can't think of a bazillion things when you call in to just check for the status, over and over and over again. And I think where we will have to look at, if you are looking, is this a laser pointer? Maybe. No, I don't see anything. Okay. So anyway, so we're going to see that a lot of things that people will use it for is games, entertainment, playing music, smart home devices, news podcasts, branded music content, and that kind of stuff. So this is the domains where we will have to look at as agencies, as marketers, as news outlets, whatever you name it, to deal with. All right. Anybody still with me? Is it interesting to you? Yes. Ask questions if you have questions. I'm not a professor. I don't teach. I used to teach at uni, but that's a long time ago. So feel free to ask questions if you have any, okay? Right? I don't want to have like this Frontalunterricht here. That's not the way I do. So people want it because it's convenient, it's always on, it's a natural interaction, obviously. And if you think about our system, and I'm not doing this for promotional purposes, just because it's a good example in the car to see why voice interfaces are good for us. It's hand-free, it's eyes-free. So I can interact with the system, I can open the window, I can put the climate change to whatever I want to have it without having to take my hands off the steering wheel or being distracted from the traffic, right? It's omnidirectional, so no matter which direction I talk to, you can still hear me because the microphone is pointed at my mouth, but I can talk to anything in my room, and that's what it's going to be like. In the future, even now, if you look at Alexa or Echo, it has several speakers or microphones in it, and it can hear from which direction something is addressing it. So we're going to see even more of that it's going to identify whether you talk to it or to somebody else. It's not going to prompt a command. It's cheaper than touchscreens, obviously, voice user interfaces. Touchscreens are quite expensive, quite technical. It takes a lot of energy to power them. If you look at voice user interfaces, it's just microphone and a speaker. And the best thing is you all have a smartphone, which makes you voice user interface enabled. Of course, you have a screen as well, I know that. But just saying, if you think about your fridge or your microwave, it's easier to put in a microphone and a speaker than anything. It's omni-device. You build it once, and you can deploy it anywhere. Huge thing. So anybody of you who builds websites knows you got to build them mobile responsive, and you got to have them scaled to each and every screen size. If you think about voice user interfaces, none of that needed. You build it once, and you can deploy it anywhere. So that makes it also cheaper in development. Speech has more meaning than text. It has tonality to it, emotion. Yeah? So this is something I can carry. And of course, I can also identify the sentiment within the speech that I'm receiving from a customer. It's checking time, but I'm good in time. Okay. So you can use that to convey more meaning. And it's a human way of interacting with technology, which is way more interesting to us to design than just maybe some abstract screens, bubbles, burger menus, and whatever we do. We have to think more like us, like humans, when we build a voice user interface. And I just told you about Career Foundry. Also, again, it's not promotional, but they're the first ones to launch a program, an online program for voice user interface design. Because it's not just, but I'm not talking, okay, perfect, that's fine. Yeah. So the voice user interface design, it's not about just building, stupid dialogues, that go back and forth and doing an FAQ style dialogue. But you really have to think how you can reach a larger audience, no matter who's talking to it, and still build in all the nuances of communication that we have. And to look for the subtle cues, be it words, be it meanings you convey, but also looking at, tonality, sentiment, and all that kind of stuff. One huge number that I wanted to show you. Sorry. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Once I already drove with your A-Class, so it was nice. Also the new UI and UX. But the first time I drove with my buddies, and I showed them, well, hey, you can run everything with your language, all the time during the trip. My window was opening and closing all the time, because, language could also be, what I want to point out is, language could also be some kind of security problem in car, because with sound or with language you can make some commands, and maybe these are some problems. So you point this, of course, I think out. So can you give me an example where you stop using language for car driving and what you're going to do?
I don't think that you will be able to command any security relevant topics through your voice command. So that will be that's always like two systems in the car. The ones that operate the engine, brakes and whatnot, and those are not connected. Those are serial bus controllers that are very robust in nature, and you won't be able to control those through a voice command.
Okay, so I think in future the car will be much more connected to other third-party development or software development things, and maybe you have to control them as well through language.
Yeah.
So how are you going to control these things? I mean, okay, you can build two separated systems, but of course you can think of, I don't know, they opened the window when I drive 250 on the highway. I don't know. This is also
you still got that that what is it called? Not the rear window, front window. That's gonna protect you, so it's on the side. But I get your point. Yeah.
Okay, so do you see any relevant security problems which might be?
I think what you're addressing is not limited, is not concerning voice, but more the security architecture of the car. If you think of the car as a platform, which I was mentioning before, if the car becomes a smart device, then of course there will be security measures put in place to avoid third-party access. Absolutely. Can I say that 100% sure nobody will access it? I can't. I don't know. I'm not a developer for the car OS operating system that needs to protect itself from cloud access. Yeah. But for voice user interfaces, definitely, I think what you right now still have is that it's sometimes maybe if I understood you correct, we call it false positives. So it thinks it's got the right thing, the right intent, but it did not. So you talk maybe with your friend about you got great windows, and it understands I opened the window, and it's going to do that, right? And right now you still need like a prompting command that you're going to have. I'm going to talk about that later. But in the future, that prompting command will disappear. You won't have to say anymore, hey Alexa, or okay Google, or I don't know, whatever. Now if I say okay Google, probably 20 phones will start shooting off. That won't happen in the future anymore. It will understand you by your voice. Through voice biometrics, it would identify you, and I've seen systems do that, even with very critical information in the banking sector. And it then will interact only when it feels addressed, in terms of when you really direct your voice to it and say something that's within its sphere of control. Right? If the device can't do anything about it, then it won't trigger any intent and any action. That's things we're working on, but it's of course tough to do. Because having for example, this voice biometrics topic, if we take that to make sure that you only address your car and not your family, which sometimes if a lot of children are in the car and they all go crazy in the back seat and they all address your car, then you could go nuts. So you can train your car that only you can access it, of course. But then again, we need a profile from you, so we can save to that profile your voice biometrics. And then we come into the data privacy stuff and regulations, like with GDPR. And that's where quickly the thing between convenience, I want that because it's great, drives into difficulty doing it because you guys sometimes are picky about privacy, which I can understand, I'm too. So it's always a trade-off then, but that's different topics. Yeah. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer, also technical or marketing, whatever you're feeling. Yes, go ahead. Before I
have
continue.
2 questions. The one is as I'm producing audios. So my question is, how can I, or what kind of product can I offer that matches the future? You know, so what's the next? How can I use that?
So you produce audios, like
Audiobooks.
audiobooks,
But
okay.
you know, it's one offer.
Yeah,
But yeah, we produce audios.
yeah.
So
This is now quickly on top of my mind, but I've seen research done on that. If you remember role-playing games, like even there were books that you could jump back and forth between different pages depending on the decision you would take. I think books will be more interactive on that part, that there will be an engagement of the book with you as a human. You will start to be part of the story and be part of the narrator that drives the story wherever it goes based on your decisions, your free will. And you will interact with voice with it. So at some point, probably if it's a love story, Adrian will ask, should I continue dating Mary or shouldn't I? Well, I don't know. Don't do it. Oh, okay, I'll tell her then not. Yeah. So I think this is what's it going to be like. It's going to be more like it used to be in the 90s, text-based RPGs, role-playing games, and that will be with audiobooks as well, even more. And I don't think now if I listen to audiobooks, and I listen a lot to them in the car, I sometimes get frustrated because I can't search the content. I can't search it. And if it's something like not a more technical book or a Fachbuch, and it's not just a story, then I want to jump to the topics that I'm interested in, and I can't. So this is something that I think you would have to enable. And for that, it's great, of course, to understand the intent, the search that the customer wants, and then map it onto the content of the book, of the content itself. So this is going to be something that I think will be a future thing. The next is also to be available everywhere and have the story continue. So this is also what I've seen, that wherever you go, the story follows you. If I go into my car, it continues from there. If I go to, I don't know, home, and then my fridge starts telling me, and I go to the bathroom, it's the light continuing the story, if I want that. Of course, if I want it. If I don't want it, it shouldn't, you know. I go to the bedroom and it continues. That's maybe weird, I don't know. Yeah. Those are a few things from research that I know that people are working on and that I think would be good enhancements. You had the second question, I think.
yeah, but it's okay. It's fine.
It's okay, all right. Go ahead.
So I was just wondering, in driving voice UI forward, how can we ensure that it's also accessible to people with speech impediments?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Speech impediments places us, you mean like people who are deaf, who can't talk at all, or who have like... Yeah.
Really difficult to interact with voice UI.
Good point, good point. It takes training data. So even now, if we want to launch a system in Bavaria and we want to do it in the north for Hamburg, then people have a different dialect, and we got totally frustrated with that because we tried to train it, and it's you hear the dialogues, and I wanted to play and wanted to really call our voice bots, but then our data privacy regulator shut me down. It's called information security officers, and they told me you can't do that because it's real data that it's going to be played. And I thought, okay, I can't do that. And I wanted to do a recording. I can't do that as well because the systems are really connected to our backend systems and get real data out. So you could have seen, I could have shown you like the real interaction, and I could have had several people here in the room, that was my plan originally, interact with it and see if when it breaks, when you start talking with dialect. And with all sorts of impediments. The short answer, we need training data. If I have training data from people who stutter, then I can train it on recognizing it. If we as humans already have trouble understanding it and discerning what the intention is, the system will have as well. Simply put, because right now word error rate, as you have seen, 5.1 human, 4.9 with a system. So be prepared that it will perform as good as a human, and if we struggle, it will struggle as well. But there is very cool projects I've seen, but there's more on the visual recognition part from Microsoft where you have glasses and it recognizes the objects and that tells you through audio what it sees. And that goes vice versa. Of course, people who maybe have other impediments, then you can use voice to help them support in their encounters. I like it. Now you got questions. That's really good. Yeah.
If you like to map an intent, how do you start? Do you just let people talk, or do you have a plan?
Yeah, so good question. So how do you start? So first of all, you need to see where the data is. You have to have some channel where people talk to you as a company or as an entity, whatever. Then you need to get their consent, legally. And it must be an active opt-in, not just recording them. No go. They need to tell you it's okay to record me for training purposes of an AI system. And that's a lot of legal stuff to be considered there because you got to save very sensitive data. Once you have that data, you chop it up into 3 parts. Language data, which is what are the most common words and phrases they use. Then the audio model, where you train basically the acoustic model and says, okay, how do they pronounce words, how do they talk and whatnot. And then there is, but not very often, there is separate training for if people use like different phonetics, which dialects would have. Same word spelled differently. And you chop it up into that, which is a lot of work. I said 80% is then preparation of that data and train it. And you try to, at the same time, build, of course, on the data you collect, see what people want to get done with you as person, whatever, and you build, we call it intentions. It's the intent I want to book an appointment. It's the intent I want to check the status. It's the intent I want to change my password. It's the intent I want to place an order for toilet paper because it ran out. That's always an intent. So I gather a lot of data for this one intent to have it in a variety, so it'd be statistically significant enough, and then I can train it.
I'm coming.
So what do you think, what happened to the Google business model? So when all of the people using voice for search, so what happened with their advertisement?
They're trying to move in that same domain as quickly as possible to also have a voice user interface. And I talked to the first name, Brill is his last name, and they're scared of that. What we see is digital assistants being a gatekeeper, especially when it comes to voice, that does a pre-selection of the products that you're being offered. So when it comes in terms of search, and I have 10 topics that I see, 10 products or the first top listings, with voice, I don't have the time to tell you all and read everything to you. What I will limit it maybe to 3. And the company who controls this channel will select which the 3 are. It's like, you can compare it to a supermarket. There's shelf space. And if you want to be listed on that shelf space, you're going to pay. And that's what voice user interfaces will do. They will charge you money to be listed there. I think you...
Actually, Google just announced today a product called CallJoy.
Google I/O, was it just...
Yeah,
okay,
for
I didn't see that.
$39, which is actually then the phone assistant fully automatically for small businesses. So they just make new products.
It's a pretty practical question, but how many languages are you able to deploy on one system?
Yeah. So the number of languages is limited to what the platform offers. So if I look at, for example, Microsoft Azure, they have maybe like 20 or 30 languages available, but in varying quality. If you want to look at really good quality, it's 4 languages right now that they offer. They call it neural voice, which is English, Chinese, which is mainland Chinese, Italian, and German. I don't know why Italian, but and then Google has a few. Maybe they talk a lot. I don't know. And I thought it's a good market to go there, but that limits you in terms of how quickly you can expand. Keep in mind, when it comes to languages, you can't just take a whole voice user interface and just drop it into Chinese because their grammar is different. Their way of using words is different. So you need linguists, different sorts of people who really then built that voice user interface for a different language. So now it's maybe no longer the screen that I change, but it's really like how I build the sentences and everything. That takes effort. Please.
When running a website, what do I have to do to make my website fit for voice? Does it suffice to have valid HTML or something else?
It's a great question. I have an expert panel where I talk to a lot of senior executives and practitioners from businesses across industries, and we all tend to agree that in the future we'll have something like a voice standard, like voice XML used to be for IVRs, and you'd have to make your content available in voice terms so that other companies can tap into that. Aggregators, metabots like Alexa, Google, and so forth can tap into that content. And as they used to crawl it for search, now they need it in voice. And as said, natural language generation, that it takes your content and puts it in the right order and chops it up for the question the customer has, that's not there yet.
That's no standard yet.
It's not standard yet. But we think about that, building like voice XML, like a similar markup language, how you can index your website in terms of conversational design. Yeah, it's a very good question.
Hosted where? Hosted where?
Where
Like on your own website, and Google just like grabs it like today,
Exactly.
or you just like put it somewhere, like centralized, or?
I think it will be on your website. It will be a
Okay.
decentralized, and it will be a crawling format that the big companies work through. If you look at it, like how does the Google, this small business assistant work? We've seen that Google Duplex for last year's I/O.
Yeah.
Because they know how the appointment booking for small businesses works. So because they figured it out how that conversation and that negotiation for appointment works, but in real life, they built like a mirroring assistant that taps into that and is able to converse with a real human being. But it's a very narrow field. If you go broad in business now and add more things to it, like you have agriculture, you have automotive, whatever, it gets more complex, so they won't be able to do all that and map and mirror that conversation in their dialogue. So they will have the necessity to crawl something from you that they then can play to the customer.
What will also get quite interesting if you got the messages and the stories as short as possible, as long as needed,
Right.
or if you just like put it longer, so to speak. Same thing as on YouTube. When you're a YouTuber, no one realizes, like everyone is like, hey, sei fleißig, sag's in 1:30. But actually, there's that metric like on how many watches you have and the watch time.
Yeah.
And anyone wants to have like a most to have it longer and longer, that watch time, to have it more spent on your website. How do you see that? Short as possible, or?
Short as possible, and the transaction will matter. If transactions take place, no matter what you want to trigger in terms of business sense, great. If not, you failed. Because you didn't deliver the message. Yeah. I got 20 minutes left, okay. But I like the questions. I hope you're getting something out of it. I try to answer that to my best way possible. Okay, so this is like, I took this also from Alex Spinelli, the CTO from Alexa, is now a live person. That's why I mentioned him before. But he got that number, 265 billion calls a year with a 1.3 trillion cost. And this is where it comes into play. What does AI, where is it going to take us also with voice user interfaces? I'm a firm believer that AI will make our life better if we set it up in a proper way, but it will disrupt industries. It will. It will disrupt search. It will disrupt maybe audiobooks. It will disrupt the way we consume media. It's going to disrupt the way we're going to interact with things like cars. And that's not going to be great for everybody. But in terms of generally speaking, I think it's not cool to have people do 60, 70, 80 calls in a booth every day for the same topic. I don't think that's something worthwhile as a human being to aspire to. It's a job, of course, that pays your family and everything. But it's just like with the Industrial Revolution. It's something that's going to happen, and overall, it's going to benefit us as a society, that people have maybe more meaningful jobs, or jobs where they can interact with our clients, with our people that use our products on deeper terms and can deal with complaints or help them to really explain the products to them instead of just doing the 50th appointment booking for this day. And as Google launched this, okay, I didn't see the I.O. because that was just recently, then it's great that they're going into that direction. So as we said before, in customer service where I'm doing a lot of stuff, it's about convenience and ease of use for people who interact with us as a brand. We can service the preferred channel. More than 95% of incoming inquiries come through voice, through phone, and not through our websites or anything else. So people still call in, they stick to that phone. Increased efficiency, 24/7 service. So you can drop off your car whenever you want to, you can pick it up whenever you want to, you can book your appointment whenever you want to. You can take that examples and transfer them to whatever business or thing you are doing. Personalized offers and communication. Once we got voice biometrics, and that's going to come for sure, we're going to be able to personalize interactions based on your voice profile, and because we know who you are. It's going to be also an instant resolution of problems you're going to have. I just recently heard from a colleague that Telecom had also this customer service bot that you called, and it starts with, how can I help you? So it's a very open-end question. I don't know how well it performs, and didn't talk to it. I know the guys behind it who built it, but I did not talk to that live version of it. I'm curious to try it out pretty soon. And as said, the most amazing one that I've seen was from Royal Bank of Canada, where you could really do all sorts of transactions and whatnot with a voice interface. All right. What we don't want is another instant voice recognition 2.0, so press 1 if, press 2 if, but we want to have a natural way of interacting and conversing with brands and things, and going forward broader also maybe with news websites and whatnot. All right. Complexity and current issues in AI-based voice interactions. I think this is pretty neat. So you can see technology still being the #1 reason why things don't work. The damn thing didn't understand me. And this is exactly what happened to you in the car. So you're talking to it, you're there to show off, but then the noise profile, audio profile in the background, what you have is different, and the damn thing won't work. And that's why a lot of people are very, very, very picky about really using voice user interfaces right now still in open space. Even at home in their families, they try to avoid it. Because it's kind of embarrassing when you want to show off with your new gadget and tell it to do something and the damn thing won't do it, or do something completely different. Then you look like a fool. So you don't do it. I don't know if you've seen the movie Her. I think I cited in the last one where he talks also on his phone, like, but he's like really quiet, like talking into it's like in a subway, trying not to let anybody eardrop on their communication. That was more about privacy, which I think is also a huge concern to voice. Because text I can do and nobody knows what I'm typing, right? Whatever I do, yes?
Question. Because we are losing like a visual interface while going through voice, we're also missing the opportunity to brand your own brand and make like a different experience for it. Do you see that as a big problem for you, that like you can make your voice personalized different from like whether I go to a Mercedes car or
Absolutely.
BMW, and how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. This is a huge thing. But most, I'd say, products and services that are commodities. A car is now a big thing. It's like second most important purchase after a house. So I think there we still have some branding because you sit in the physical product. But once you buy shopping groceries and whatnot, and commodity goods, electronics and stuff, we're going to see a lot of white label products being marketed to you. And that's what Amazon and so forth, big giants, and Alibaba for China will do. It will be damn hard for companies to come through to customers. They will pay for that shelf space, and those companies would start building their own products for a cheaper, way cheaper version.
But are you thinking that Mercedes-Benz will have their own identity when it comes to voice to make that interaction with the human more differentiate than another brand?
I'm sure about that, yeah. We're looking into that. I know that R&D guys are looking into it, to also giving cars their own voice and stuff, and then brand them that way. And I think we're going to see that a lot more branding happening for those companies who have a very strong connection to their clients, to their customers. For a lot of companies, it will be very hard. Yeah, because the search field, as said, will narrow down maybe to a set of 2 or 3, and white label products will take over. Yeah. And the next thing that's going to happen, each one of you will have his own voice assistant, which right now it costs about 200,000 to 300,000 euros to get your voice synthesized, to get a system talk just like you. In the future, that will get cheaper and cheaper. And at some point, you'll have your own voice assistant that does all sorts of stuff for you, just like Google Duplex we've seen last year. And then that thing will be a gatekeeper and interact with the other gatekeeper, Alexa, and they will just buy whatever you want and what they offer. And I don't know where the brand communication of commodity goods will be there. Marketing will be a little bit, but you still have, of course, screens. I think it will be a merger of visual interfaces and voice. Will be both. Okay. All right. So this was the thing that I said before. 70% of customers consider voice searching in front of others embarrassing. I don't know if it's the content you look for that makes you embarrassing, or if it's just interacting with that thing with a phone, because it's weird to talk to my phone and say, hey, I want to have this and that. So it could go both ways, and of course the embarrassment when the thing doesn't do what you want. And even at home, which was interesting, 40% only do so when alone at home. It's also quite interesting. Yeah, as said, content or embarrassment. So what we need to do, of course, and I think this is going forward with the whole voice user interface, is to try to come up with that sweet spot, the ideal solution that is on the one hand useful, has a functionality, but on the other hand also is designed ethically. So it's not ethical, I think, to frame you which products I show you. If I don't give you an objective search list of which products or information, if you go forward, even information could be the same, right? And that could be very critical. If a thing would filter, and we see it already in the internet happening, with right now with websites filtering large sorts of being a gatekeeper for information, but still more liberal as with a voice interface. Now, in the future, if I listen to news, just talking to my car or talking to my phone, and while I'm going ahead, then it will filter even more the content, because I won't be able to select myself. So I think that's big thing, and then also your data. Voice is very, very tricky. If I collect enough data from you, I can synthesize your data, and that data I can use then again to do, for example, transactions with a bank. A call on behalf of you, or break up with your girlfriend, or get the lawyer to sign the divorce papers. And he says, okay, but you told me to do that. I don't know. There's a lot of scenarios for abuse going on there that could happen with your data, and I think voice is very tricky about that. So coming back to maybe the first pages that I've shown you, where Amazon is fighting for having the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and so being applied to a physical entity. That has implications for you as well as a private person. You should be aware and picky of that. So I think this is where we try a lot to do to push it in the right direction, but to be honest, it's not easy. And we're always fighting in between getting data to train the systems properly so they're functional for you, and you're not saying, oh, it doesn't help me, it doesn't do anything for me, and on the other hand, keeping your privacy and security. But a struggle that we need to accept. Technological outlook. Okay. I think I got 15 or 10 minutes, something like that. 15, perfect. So technological outlook. This is a great site if you want to go to, Linknovate. They aggregate all sorts of data, especially when it comes to AI and voice user interfaces. And if you look at the global leading voice innovators since 2010, and they try to come up with all sorts of metrics that they then aggregate to one holistic score. It's a balanced score. You can see who are it's Linknovate. You can see that Microsoft is leading this technological revolution. It's also, honestly to say, also our evaluation results have shown that Microsoft performs best right now when in terms of understanding voice and dealing with it, followed by Google, which do not publish a lot of patents, so they keep a lot of it behind curtains, and then they suddenly launch a product for 39 euros, which is your voice assistant for small businesses. So there is a lot of stuff going on that they do behind closed curtains. So maybe they are even closer or even one. Samsung. So you can see who are the players, the guys who get the data, who have smartphones with their assistants like Bixby, like for Samsung, who have Google Assistant, Microsoft Cortana, HTC, who also have their phones. Okay, there comes the tech companies like IBM. Apple has Siri, YouTube. Nuance, which I said is the leading company when it comes to smart devices and putting technology into them and making them, providing them with a voice user interface. And if you look at projections, which I thought is also quite interesting, you can see like clearly the Google Assistant and Chinese assistants, which go into the direction of Alibaba and that forth, that work on their assistants, taking over the lead. All right. So Microsoft Cortana, with not having any real end user devices except for our laptops, where Cortana prompts us and asks us for something in Windows 10, the data will simply not be enough there. But they also focus on more on businesses than on B2C communication. And for the others, like Samsung and so forth, there is like a only limited growth at some point that they can acquire. So that's a very bold statement by Tractica Research. So 82% of interfaces in 2020 will be speech recognition based, which only means they will be speech recognition based enabled. I think that's fair enough because you just have to see the adoption rate of smartphones. Where are we right now at? We're right at rule-based interactions. So you need an explicit user interaction required for speaking. Hey, Alexa. Okay, Google. Hey, Mercedes. It's a guided dialogue with scripted answers and interactions. So it's very rule-based. It's like a decision tree. So it's very hard for voice user interface designers to map out all the possible conversations that you guys would have with a human being and then map it onto a system. Right now, this is also something that I can see more and more as users can indicate at any time to talk to a human agent so that they can always leave the queue when they get frustrated. So we see hybrid systems being set up where humans are just still there, but you have the machine interacting with you. And if there's a problem, you can do a handover. And we have turn-taking conversations with clear end and start. So usually it says, hey Mercedes, ja, wie kann ich dir helfen? And then you say whatever you want, then it does it for you, and that's it. So there's always like a clear start and end. But that's not the way we interact with humans. I might be talking to you and we have a great conversation and somebody shows up and I'm just in the middle of finishing my sentence and somebody else asks me something and I jump over to that and I come back to you. It's a totally different way of interacting. We can have multiple conversation threads at the same time and keep carrying on by remembering the context that we used to have with the person at a later point in time. So in the future, we're going to have more of a human-like interaction, as said before, based on voice biometrics that will enable a one-to-one recognition of who you are and based on your profile of also what you want. It's going to be a dynamic emotional voice reaction based on tone and intent analysis. So it won't be anymore just, wie kann ich Ihnen helfen? Ich bin stinksauer, ja, hier ist Hunger. Könnt jetzt echt, es geht hier, nichts geht hier. Ich habe Sie leider nicht verstanden. Können Sie das bitte wiederholen? So it won't be like that. It will have an emotional response to you. Right? And then voice will interact with humans in a natural way, meaning it will be able, just like we've heard last year with Google Duplex, have that voice prompts like and whatnot built into it, not because it needs it, but because it makes it more convenient for you. It's something you are accustomed to as a human. And voices, this is the question from before, will convey brand personality. You will market through voice. What will be your voice be like? Will it be like, for example, for an G-Class, a deep, manly voice because it's an SUV and I don't know. Yeah, and it will be maybe a nice female voice for a roadster. I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen. Maybe you can change based on your preferences, but we're going to see more of that toying around with that stuff. As said before, this is something from HBR. I always show this slide because I think it's a great explanation where we are at also with AI as a whole. And if you look at voice user interfaces, it goes into the direction of digital labor, in my opinion. Perfect. Thank you. So we had that revolution of manual labor jobs back in the 18th and 19th century. And we're happy that we don't longer have to work in factories, you know, and put together an engine like for hours and just do the same movement. We had administrative and service jobs being taken away, right, in the last century. Just think of an automatic teller machine, an ATM, where you get money from. That used to be clerks at a counter. You go to, say your name, and then they write something and give you the money. Right now, you're accustomed to ATMs. There is no more clerks to go to and get money to, except for you're a millionaire and you take a lot of money. And now we're going to see knowledge work jobs being taken over more and more by AI. Decision-making being taken over. And voice user interfaces being one of the main key entry points to interact with those AI systems. So be prepared that this will affect a majority of jobs, and I think it's an opportunity if we set it up the right way, but it could also be a danger, in my opinion, to our society, because it will destabilize us to a certain extent. Just some critical words at the end. Being at Republica, so I got to be critical. So if you look at the evolution where we are at, we're currently at this pattern-based decision-making. Right? We started out with basic automation, simple application macros, very, very hard-coded stuff. Then we moved into deterministic rules where we had like decision trees, balancing if those three variables, if for example, to keep an example, predict when you leave your bank. If no longer your monthly paycheck goes into your bank account, that's one factor that tells me you're probably going to cancel that account, okay? If I see that you haven't taken any money from that account in the past 2 weeks, second factor. If I get the third, that for example, you don't have any reoccurring payments happening in your account, for example, for your Netflix account, that probably you're going to cancel your account. That's deterministic rules. If those factors happen, then I take a decision and do something. Now we go into pattern. It is more unstructured data. So that's all going into voice because that's unstructured data. I get some blobble, some audio file, and I need to interpret and reason with it. And we're going to see that movement into cognitive computing where we're going to have multiple sources of data being put together, and based on those then have systems being developed and deployed. This means for companies, of course, 3 things, very, very simplified. 1, to get the right channels to the customer, get into those channels. 2, have the right services, and not in form of 50 new apps, but in form of as a conversational user interface. And then move into platforms. Could be, I just put 3 names here, the most common, IBM Watson, Microsoft Bot Framework, Google Cloud, that offer that sorts of technology. But you will have to at some point build backends where you can serve and cater those services through the voice user interface to your clients. And it might be open source like Rasa that in Berlin just raised 13 million, or some other, as you told me now, a company what was the name? Snipes. Okay, so cool companies that offer that. So for us, it's always like we have a platform as well at Mercedes. For us, it's Ask Mercedes or Hey Mercedes in the car. And our vision is, of course, to have it anywhere accessible through all channels, whereas voice is the one that we consider the most prominent and most used one. And via any channel being available and have a consistent message across all channels, right? Not have a different voice for each channel, not have different content, but really have the same brand experience wherever you go. And make that accessible to metabots like a Google Assistant or wherever you want to name it, so that they can tap into our conversational UI. Cool. That's it from my side. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. I think there's one. If not, I'll leave you to your next.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I just wanted to ask, you showed us the statistics and growth. We didn't see the geographic location, but I'm sure there will be some places where it's low, like in Africa, maybe because of the languages are not included. What are your measures you're taking, like to have some inputs from those different countries where like the languages are not well prepared, like maybe having a partnership, I don't know, yeah.
I had a conversation about the internet just before this session started, and there people told me in Africa you have better internet than we have in Germany. And it might be that also you'll take a leap there, because there is very, very innovative companies there that I'd say are very active in the sphere of AI. And if they get the data from customers, then there is no reason why they shouldn't be able to offer it. Right now, you're right. It's more China, German, Italian, as I said before, English, of course, that's being offered. And then comes French, Spanish, and whatnot. But I could think of that maybe in the next 5 years, we see a huge leap also in Africa, jumping over technologies. And maybe even it's a good thing, because you don't have to deal with all the legacy systems and stuff that we need to deal with. And maybe you have a better I'd say not better, but maybe a less customer-friendly data privacy regulation as we have in the EU or in the US that limits you to work with data. And if you get access to the data as the Chinese have, then you can leap forward and overtake us. So I think that's could be the case. Yeah. All right.
Anyone else?
Cool. Then thank you for listening. Thank you for the questions. I hope it was worthwhile for you. And have fun wherever you go.